I get to build a solar-powered car that goes into space. Hi, I'm Sean Backus. I'm in 8th grade at Devlin Junior Senior High School in Lakewood, Colorado. I just want to do anything with like computers. I really like electronics and stuff. I've always liked math, physics. I like physics more than chemistry. I did once build a solar-powered little remote control car. Hi, I'm Sean Backus.
Nice to meet you, Sean. I'm Joe Ramos.
So what is LASP?
The Laboratory of Atmospheric and Space Physics is what LASP stands for. We build things like that. It's a big satellite. So that's that's what we do here. But what brings you here?
Ever since a young age, I've always been really into science and math and building things. Like when I was really young, I built with Legos, and then a little more recently, I built a solar-powered car out of a kit. It was really fun to play with.
That sounds like it was fun to play with. So, as either the scientist or the engineer or anyone like that, you would be in charge of trying to make it go faster. And so, you could make it go fast enough to essentially jump into space, which is essentially what this is. Very similar to what you built in concept. Instead of having a little thumb-controlled thing, you have a whole room of computers. Yeah. But yeah, it's essentially the same concept.
Except it doesn't come in a kit.
It does, actually. So every little part of this has a kit, and it gets sent to the assemblers. And the assembler opens up the kit, and they assemble it. Very similar to what you did. Well, this is our clean room.
What's a clean room?
A clean room, as you may guess, is a room that is clean. And by clean, this is a very different, like for instance, your mom says, go clean your room. This is not.
Yeah.
There's no dust in there. No paper is allowed in the room.
Would this do anything for my solar car if I were to do anything in there?
Yeah. So if this is the solar cell, this is the glass on top of it. The light from the sun has to pass through the glass into the cell.
Yeah.
So the more dirt that's on there,
the less comes through.
The less comes through, and the less power you have in your solar cell. So one thing that you could do in here is you could create incredibly clean surfaces for your solar cells that would increase the power of your vehicle, potentially allowing it to jump very slightly, a little bit better than it did before. We're really kind of talking about doing a complete redesign of solar cells.
Yeah.
So, as a scientist, one of the things that you would do is you would model how particles interact, which is what this software does. All has to do with creating a more efficient solar cell. Mm. So let's imagine that we did that, and we created a situation where the car went faster. Then, what would you do with the car?
I would jump it.
All right. And what would you be afraid of at that point?
The landing.
The landing.
Because it wasn't built to jump.
It wasn't built to jump. At that point, you'd have to bring this to an engineer. So what an engineer would do is they would take the information about how much faster the car would go. Mm-hmm. They would use similar sorts of software to do this sort of drawing that would then be able to tell what sort of stress and strain that the car would be able to take. Mm-hmm. So that it may just completely crumple on the landing. Mm-hmm. Then they could strengthen things up, make things thicker, put more supports or whatever. And at that point, you could jump your car. And the next stop would be the machine shop, so we could build the new car. And this is the machine shop. So once the engineer receives the information from the scientist about what is different about the car and redesigns the car to withstand the damage that someone like you would inevitably put it through upon landing from this massive jump you'd like to do, the car has to be built by somebody and by something. It would be sent here to a machine shop of some sort, where you have a couple different types of machines. The important part is, this is where you take raw material and turn it into a finished part.
So what is your job and how did you get to be here?
I went through a trade school to be a machinist, and I've been working here in the instrument shop for the last 5 years.
So, now that you have your new car, you're jumping off these huge jumps, and it's getting far away from you because of how fast it could go with the redesign. The dinky thumb control radio thing, you have to rethink that whole thing. This is where the scientists control the satellite in the same way that you would use your thumbs to control your remote control car. luckily, scientists have students instead of thumbs, and they sit in front of these computers, and they control satellites. So if we made the remote control car big enough and fast enough that it could launch into orbit, you would come here and control it.
What would be the kind of path I'd have to take to become an engineer with a job like that?
Well, you actually have a couple of options. If you wanted to do mostly the designing, you would probably be an engineer. And an engineer draws it, somebody else uses tools and makes it. If you want to be part of the people who explores more, if you want to explore, like, wait, we don't know why this happens. We don't know this. I'm interested in things that we don't know, which is very akin to feeling like an idiot. Then you would become a scientist. So if you're okay with feeling like an idiot all the time, science is pretty good. The third thing you could be is more of an innovator. Someone who essentially comes up with something cool. They're not really engineers. They're not really software engineers. They're not really mathematicians. There's something a little bit of everything. They're just someone who is solving this problem for the world. And then, of course, if you like working with your hands more and actually being with real material, that's more a machinist job. And then oftentimes there's someone after them called an assembler who will assemble that whole thing, which in this scenario would be you. You assemble it all.
So what you're saying is I can innovate a new idea of, like, I don't know, making my solar car fly into space. I send it to scientists to research how it's done, and then give it to an engineer to use known data to figure out the exact way how it's done, and then give it to a machinist to build the parts and almost make a new kit. Then give it to an assembler to put it together, and I get to control it and send it off into space.
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying.
So I'm already really interested in math and science in schools, and I've picked out a couple colleges that are really good in engineering type things. So do you have any advice for me for someone who wants to grow up and become an engineer?
Pay a lot of attention to geometry. That's surprisingly, I mean, something I learned when I was in 8th grade, but it's the most useful tool that I have in my arsenal of mathematical tools. And I've learned a lot of math since then. Geometry I use more than anything else. More than adding, surprisingly.
Is it like really complex geometry, or?
No, it's simple. It's probably the same stuff that you use. You have a triangle and you want to know the length. Do that thousands of times a day. That solves so many of our problems.
All right, thank you for your time. I've learned a lot.
All right, great. Hope you send your resume to us in a couple of years.